to...
Oh my god, that's so creepy.
All right, let's dive into Villisca, Iowa. Here, in the shadows of horror, lies the infamous Villisca Axe Murder House. 8 lives, 6 of them innocent children, brutally ended by the swing of an axe. This house is renowned as one of the nation's most haunted.
You have all of these children that are murdered. You have 2 girls that were on a sleepover, which is like every parent's nightmare.
Oh, God. Yeah,
And the killer was never found.
There was an individual who was a reverend named George Kelly. He told someone about the murders in a roundabout way. He apparently made some oddly vague statement about there's 8 souls that were released or something like that. And so on August 31st at 7 a.m., Kelly signed a confession to the murders saying God had whispered to him to suffer the children to come unto me.
That sounds like
A confession from a f***ing lunatic.
Exactly.
And in 2014, things took an even more chilling turn as a paranormal investigator turned his own blade upon himself within these walls. Get ready to immerse yourself fully into the supernatural. Falling lamps, flying objects, and the disembodied cries of the slain innocent.
But that higher voice sounds like a kid.
Because we're about to embark on a journey into the realm of unspeakable terror. But before we start, make sure you head over to my Patreon at Jack Osbourne, become a member of my community. There's extra footage from the episode, there's behind the scenes pictures, we're gonna be dropping merch, and there's a whole bunch more that we're gonna be rolling out over the next few months. Like clip submissions, that's when you send in your paranormal evidence and we review it. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and now I present the Villisca Axe Murder House.
This one is it's a very known case. It's so well covered and investigated that I've never been able to investigate it because the network's like, no, we've just done it too many times. But I do want to go, actually.
I would love to go too.
Yeah. So what is the case?
The case is the Villisca Axe Murder House.
And that's in Villisca, Iowa. Now this is a very famous, world-renowned case, incredibly brutal. They found 8 bodies, 6 of which were children, had been brutally murdered in a house by an axe, and they never found out who did it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's what makes this one of the most horrifying cases, really, because you have all of these children that are murdered. You have 2 girls that were on a sleepover, which is like every parent's nightmare, that got killed.
That's why, yeah.
And the killer was never found.
Nope. Yeah, it's wild. So what makes this case relevant is that in 2014, a young man was investigating the house. Mm-hmm. He was a paranormal investigator there with a team.
Yeah.
His teammates discovered him with a stab wound.
And he called for help, correct?
Yes, he called for help. He was stabbed. It was self-inflicted. The police never said what he stabbed himself with, and he's never spoken of what happened.
That seems strange.
Right?
But why wouldn't he talk about it? I mean, I wonder if he's like embarrassed or it's too terrifying. I mean, I don't know.
Did he go there with the plan to kill himself? Like, I'm going to kill myself in the Axe Murder House. Like, why the fuck not?
I don't think so. You want to know what my intuition is kind of telling me?
Yeah, tap in.
I think that he maybe was maybe being a little bit like aggressive towards the spirits or not so polite, and he kind of had a consequence to that. It was like, maybe I'm not supposed to talk about that.
Interesting.
Because you see investigators doing this crap all the time. They're like going and yelling at the spirits.
The come at me, bro,
technique. Come at me. Oh, like, and it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Should we break down some information about this case?
Break it down.
All right. So the murders occurred in June of 1912. And as of right now, it is unknown who this murderer was. On June 10th, there were 8 occupants in the house. It was a mother, a father, their 4 children, and two friends, two little girls that were sleeping over. The family had just come home from a sermon. They went to church. They got home around 10 p.m. That, to me, is the first suspect thing. Getting home around 10 p.m. back in, 1912, I feel like that was late back then.
Well, late night church service,
Was that is that a thing?
Sure, totally. I mean, look, you have church, you have evening church, maybe there's a gathering after church and people are having tea and coffee
Bake
and
sale.
snacks. And I don't think that that's unusual.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. So they come home. That's the last anyone ever saw them alive, was when they left the church. Now, the next day, the family was discovered in kind of a weird way. A neighbor went to the house because she didn't see anyone out and about. Like, it was 7 a.m. She said it was unusual that there was no one out doing their normal chores.
Right.
And then she saw that the horses were not being tended to. So she's like, okay, this is definitely suspect. She goes to the house, knocks on the door, no one's there. She tries to open the door, it's locked. So she's like, all right, this is really weird.
Yeah.
Contacts the brother of the father. He then goes to the house, opens the door, finds complete chaos.
Mm-hmm.
What he discovered was the 8 victims, all of whom had died from axe wounds to the neck, head, and face.
Mm-hmm.
And all the bodies had like coverings on their face, like handkerchiefs or,
Right.
something covering their face, which is very strange. What's even stranger is they found bacon wrapped in a towel in one of the rooms. They have no idea why bacon was present.
Right.
And there was also a bloody bowl of water on the table.
I mean, it sounds very premeditated. It sounds personal. And I'll go out on a limb and say it feels like there are religious undertones.
Yes. Oh, I forgot to say, yeah, there was also the mirrors were all covered with blankets.
Right.
So there's a lot of freaking, you're going to go axe murder 8 people, 6 of whom are children. 1 was 5.
It's just the worst of the worst. Yeah.
I cannot even imagine. It's just so horrible. And they just can't figure out who did it. That's the crazy thing. Hey everyone, it's Jack Osbourne here, and Ghosts and Grit is sponsored by Blue Chew. Are you ready for a little sex talk? Don't worry, this one's fun and not awkward. Blue Chew is the best. It's a service delivering chewable tablets with the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra. You sign up at BlueChew.com, you chat with a licensed medical provider, and once approved, you'll receive a delivery in days. I went through that whole process myself, signed up, spoke to a medical professional, had a few back and forth emails, wham, bam. A couple days later, I had this discreet brown envelope. I opened it up, because what is this? I had these little black sachets of endless fun, and you too can have that experience. Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. Discover your options at BlueChew.com. Chew it and do it. Giggity giggity. We've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew for free when you use our promo code GHOSTS at the checkout. All you do is pay $5 in shipping. That's BlueChew.com, promo code GHOSTS to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information, and we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. There was an individual who was a reverend named George Kelly. Now, the way that they kind of pinned it on this guy was that he left Villisca the morning of the murders. I should say the morning after the murders. And while on the train, he told someone about the murders in a roundabout way. He did outright say, he apparently made some oddly vague statement about there's 8 souls that were released or something like that.
Which is interesting language when you're saying there's 8 souls that were released, or 8 souls.
Yes.
It's
odd.
I mean, yeah.
But to your point, he was a reverend. He was clearly a religious man. He ended up having this conversation on the train, and then some years later, they arrested him, and he went to trial for the murders. Now, while on trial, he was actually acquitted.
I mean, it just seems so odd. It's like, I know that, records show that he was acquitted also because people thought he was just crazy. Maybe that's like insanity. They thought he was insane. But that doesn't mean you just release a killer into the streets.
He had a written confession. And so on August 31st at 7 a.m., Kelly signed a confession to the murder saying God had whispered to him to suffer the children to come unto me.
I mean, that sounds like
a confession from a fucking lunatic.
Exactly. And the reason that I think that there are religious undertones, the bacon, right? It's such a weird thing. Why is there bacon in the middle of this crime scene? It's not cooked, right? It's just laying there. There's a whole thing. It's in the Bible where in the book of Mark, there's a whole thing about pigs and Jesus casting demons out of men into pigs. It says, and they cried out, saying, what business do you have with us, Son of God? You have come here to torment us before the time. Now there was a herd of many pigs feeding at a distance from them. So the demons begged Jesus, saying, if you are going to cast us out, send us into the herd of pigs.
Okay, so you think that he was trying to like cast these demon spirits within his victims into this like slab of bacon?
Well, I think if you're afraid that demons are possessing people, or you think, that could be the situation, then I guess, and this is like me thinking in terms of how would a serial killer, or a killer, not serial killer, how would a serial killer, I keep saying that. Is this a serial killer? It's like coming out over and over again. I'm like,
maybe it is.
Maybe it is. I'm like, I can't stop saying that. This is my thought, that it's like a crazed, like overly religious killer is thinking that by ending the lives of these kids, he's saving them, and that if he kills them and there's a demon, at least the demon will go into the bacon, which is a pig. And then we have all of the mirrors that have been covered. And so a lot of people believe that mirrors can be portals or gateways for spirits and demons. So it's like he covered the mirrors so nothing's going in or out through the portal. Then maybe the demons are going into the bacon. I mean, it sounds really like just a really mentally ill, sick, delusional person.
Yeah.
Possibly schizophrenic. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist, but if you're hearing voices telling you to, save the children or whatever.
Suffer the children, come unto me.
It's just like, I mean, I don't understand how this guy just got let off. That seems very, very, in alignment with the case, right?
Something that is interesting as well that you brought up earlier is about the covering of the face. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so research shows, and this is like, research from universities and papers have been written about, when murderers cover the faces of their victims, it usually indicates that there is a relationship there. There's a personal relationship. This is not a stranger to the murderer. So they're covering the face because they don't want to look at the victim's face. I think it's interesting that everything happens from the neck up, right? I mean, I can't say for certain, but in a lot of religions, right, you don't hurt the body. You shouldn't get tattoos. You don't harm your body. This is God's work. I mean, maybe it's like something like that. I mean, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea fully, but definitely premeditated, religious undertones. I can't believe the Reverend got off.
I wonder what happened to him thereafter. Like, where did he die? How did he... Should we look that up? Let's take a look. All right. Kelly was an English-born traveling minister in town on the night of the murders. Kelly was described as peculiar, reportedly having suffered a mental breakdown as an adolescent. As an adult, he is accused of peeping and several times asked young women and girls to pose nude for him. On June 8th, 1912, he came to Villisca to teach at the Children's Day Service.
Oh, God.
Which the Moore family attended. Oh.
It's totally him. Come on.
On June 9th.
Why is this so hard to figure out?
He left town between 5 a.m. and 5:50 a.m. on June 10th, hours before the bodies were discovered. Reverend Kelly confessed to the murders in court, but the jury didn't believe his confession. In the weeks that followed, he displayed a fascination with the case and wrote many letters to police investigators and the family of the deceased. This aroused suspicion, and a private investigator wrote back to Reverend Kelly asking for details that the minister might know about the murders. Kelly replied with great detail, claiming to have heard sounds and possibly witnessed the murders. His known mental illness made authorities question whether he knew the details because of having committed the murders or was imagining.
Could he be
his
psychic,
account.
though? Could he be psychic?
He could be. I mean, it's sure.
Okay, so, I mean, that's, like, really important information. So, to me, look, I'm not a psychiatrist. Sounds like he has some sort of schizoaffective disorder. He hears voices. He had some sort of a break. And also, when people have these experiences, they can actually hear spirits or see things. I think we talked about this before, where I encountered somebody that was really not well, but knew things about me that he couldn't have known. I've heard several people that have had those experiences. It's a fine line.
It does seem oddly obvious, though, that the maybe, but people do give like false testimony and admissions.
But how did he write all of these letters detailing the murders? How would he know? He was either there or he's super tapped into the spirit world or psychic and could see it.
Yeah.
I don't know how else you would know that information.
Yeah, neither do I. Because that's
Seems unlikely.
highly unlikely.
And there was another person of interest, from what I understand. William Mansfield was another suspect. And the reason that he wasn't arrested is because he was never convicted of any of the other axe murders that occurred in surrounding states.
Mm-hmm.
But what's alarming is that in the other cases, the mirrors were also covered.
So wait, you've got a guy who's already being accused of axe murders in other states.
Right.
In which the mirrors in the house were covered, just like in the Villisca house.
Mm-hmm.
And they think, that's just so weird.
And he was in Villisca at the time of these murders.
If it looks like a duck and if it quacks like a duck, it's a duck.
And he used an axe. It's like, I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. But how the hell would the Reverend have known about it?
The other thing is that, people thought the Reverend was a little out there, maybe unstable. Maybe he was able to hear God and spirits. I mean, look, I'm a psychic medium. I hear things. Mm-hmm. Maybe he had this ability to be tapped in. It still feels like he's somehow involved, though. It doesn't make sense. It's like, why would he say the children, God said suffer the children unto me?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know. This case is so crazy. It's like,
really is.
If I tap into it psychically, I still feel like the Reverend had a major part in this case.
Oh.
Major. And who's to say that he didn't hear about other axe murders that were occurring in towns, before and mimicked it?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's like, oh, I better cover the mirrors. Because the other ones didn't have the faces covered, didn't have bacon.
Now, the gory details of this are just, they're painful. It's painful to imagine the sight, let alone even be the receiving end of this. When the bodies were found, the wounds were all to the neck, face, and head.
Right.
The killer had placed cloth over the face of every victim, and it was pieces of clothing that the killer had kind of picked up. There was the axe left downstairs, so they have the actual murder weapon.
Right.
which is bonkers. And surely, even though they weren't doing fingerprints back in 1912,
Right.
it wasn't that long after that they started doing it. Like, why have they never, like, dusted it for fingerprints?
I mean, I think the whole crime scene was contaminated by people coming in and out, and you know, things were different then. And also, I think it's important to note that, I mean, the like criminology and profiling wasn't really established, or the idea of being able to profile criminals didn't really come to be until like the 70s, right? I think it was like the 1970s where they really started to put these profiles together. I think if this had happened today, we'd obviously know who it was, right? For a number of reasons. DNA, fingerprints, profiling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From all the evidence that was found, I make up that this guy was there for a long time.
Yeah.
Because they found cigarette butts, they found food on the table, and the cigarette butts were in the attic. There was the bloody water bowl on the table, which if the house didn't have running water makes sense, because he probably was washing up before his little snack.
Well, and if there's cigarette butts in the attic, then I would say he was in the attic at the time that they came home and probably was already in the house.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And then everybody goes to sleep, and then he's already in the house because they were out to church. He knew their routine. He likely knew them. I mean, it all kind of comes together, right?
Yeah. What makes the hauntings of this location just so terrifying?
Well, people are hearing disembodied voices of children. They're getting EVPs of children that are very clear, like some of the clearest EVPs I've ever heard, right? People are seeing a ghostly figure, a man with an axe walking back and forth. Their like doors are slamming.
Why would the ghost of the killer be there?
Here's my thought on that. Sure, the ghost of the killer can be there, and it can also be like a psychic imprinting. So when you see the same figure walking back and forth in the same exact spot over and over, to me, I would say that's psychic imprinting. Because why would a ghost just hang out in like one corner of a house for eternity, right? But the other thing too is that I think when there's a trauma, and I've said this before, there can be fragments of the soul that stay behind, and they're very active and they're intelligent, but you can be picking up on that fragment.
But it's not the whole soul.
But it's not the entirety of the soul. I also think that this applies to the spirit world, because it doesn't make sense that the entirety of a soul is stuck in a house that makes no sense. Energetically, it doesn't make sense.
Do you think that there is an element of ritual in the killings that occurred in this house?
Definitely. 100%. I mean, the way that the cloths were laid over the faces of the victims, the mirrors were covered, the bacon. Everybody was killed the same way.
The bacon.
The bacon. No, they were all killed the same way. I wish we knew the details of the other axe murder crimes that had been committed around the same time in different states. That would be really telling, because are we dealing with a serial killer, or are we dealing with just a really crazed religious person?
Yeah. Oh, it's so gruesome, this case.
It's awful. It's awful.
And the crazy thing is, this is one of the rare, well, I wouldn't say it's rare, but it's one of the cases that has so much evidence around the crime that there is no, like, the facts are the facts with this. Like, yeah, I might be maybe placing them in slightly weird orders, but for the most part, everything is as it was documented by the police and the newspapers at the time.
And I think we also have to look at the fact that the Reverend was a traveling Reverend. And whoever brought this Reverend into town would then be looked upon as being like, how did you let this guy in? Maybe there's a cover up there. Like, oh, we don't want to be responsible for letting this guy into the town. Let's just pretend this didn't happen. And that he left right after and knew about the souls going to, whatever. I mean, nobody wants to be responsible for that.
No. But someone should have been. When stuff like this happens, it's infuriating.
Yeah, for sure.
On a spiritual level, I get why the spirits of those victims would haunt that house.
Absolutely.
Talk about no closure.
Yeah, no closure. The way that it happened was so gruesome, violent, unexpected. And I've encountered spirits that have died tragically that had they didn't see it coming, that they get to the other side and they're like, what the hell? Like, I'm dead. They're having a hard time even understanding that they're dead, and that can be that fragmented piece that still is just like, what is going on here,
I just can't believe that no one heard a thing. The parent, like, you're not gonna, I mean, yeah, sure, the first victim, you're not gonna hear, you're not gonna hear that coming, but if you're in the same room and you hear someone getting hit in the face with an axe, I've got to. I mean, that has to make a noise.
I don't. The whole thing. I mean, I don't know. It's awful. The whole thing is awful.
Yeah. Oof. Well, let's dive into some of the haunting facts.
Okay.
Because there's no shortage. So the paranormal stuff that usually goes on at this location, kind of your run of the mill. Shadow figures roaming halls, hearing noises, walking, in the rooms above you and there's no one there, orbs in pictures, full-bodied screams of children. So, like, meaning, like, you can really, really hear it. But what makes this place particularly interesting to me as someone who's investigated a lot is the clarity of the EVPs.
Yeah.
I'm shocked at how clear some of these are.
Mm-hmm.
I'll play them. Okay, so this was taken from Prism Paranormal, and they are a investigative team that went. With these EVP recordings, there's like a 3D graphic that accompanies the recording just so you can kind of see it. So the reason I want to show it is so you could really hear how crystal clear this is.
Okay.
Usually when I've got EVPs, it's kind of muffled. It's, your brain could kind of play tricks.
Right.
Not so much with this. So check this out. All right. So the first part of this, that's just them. And you'll see, like, up in the corner, it says original recording.
Right.
So this is like a digitized image of the sound file. Now they're isolating it. Let me back it up a little bit. So that was the first part. Now here's the isolated part of interest. Do you hear that?
Yeah, that's crazy. You can hear like a little kid.
Get in here. It's almost like two voices.
That's so wild. Like, you wouldn't be having a conversation like that with somebody.
No. And listen, let's listen to the whole file from the top.
Get in here. What? Huh? Get in here. Get in here.
Wait, what's the other one? There's like two voices at the same time.
So I think one is the woman because you hear someone go, huh? Like, listen.
Get in here. What? Huh?
See that second huh? It sounds similar to...
Get in here. Get in here.
But that higher voice sounds like a kid.
Yeah, that one's... I hear two voices talking. I'm not sure if one of them is one of the investigators.
That sounds crazy.
Okay, this next one is same team. It's same investigative team. It's Prism Paranormal. And this is the original.
It was right at the top. Oh my God.
Oh,
that's so creepy.
it is so crystal clear. It sounds like it says he's gonna hurt Paul.
It's so clear.
Yeah. Then we've got same thing, Prism Paranormal, digital file. This is the original recording.
There's a kid's voice right there. It's...
Sounds like he's saying, do it again, Lena.
Whoa, weird. I've never heard EVPs that clear.
No.
Not of kids, like, ever.
No. The thing that it's almost unbelievable is that the names that you're hearing from Paul and Lena, those are actually the victims' names. Yeah.
I mean, that's some pretty strong evidence.
And then we have this one. Now,
whoa, that's like sounds like a toddler.
It
it's a
sounds
small
like a kid is in the room with them.
I know. I wish we had video of them as they were taking these EVPs.
Yes. See, that's the thing that always, the only way I ever really, validate EVPs is I have to see video of the recording occurring.
Yeah. I mean, if those are in fact real EVPs, they're some of the best EVPs I've ever heard.
Yeah. If you were to explain to someone those recordings of an EVP where a little kid is saying like, do it again, Lena, or he's going to hurt us, Paul, how would you go about explaining that?
Okay, there could be one of two things. You have the kids that are in the house still, which is sad. You would hope that that's not where they would be, or you would hope that those fragments aren't there. I talk about fragments because nobody wants that for children that have died in such a horrific way. Or you're dealing with something else that's mimicking the voices of the children and messing with the investigators. It doesn't have to be demonic. I mean, there are intelligent entities and entities that are capable of doing that.
Yeah. Interesting. Ghost Adventures have also been to the house.
Yeah.
And they caught a clip which is pretty damn powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen a door slam like this with that much aggression. So this comes to us from Ghost Adventures and season 4 when they were investigating the Villisca Axe Murder House. So here we have the kind of 2 doors, and just listen. It's all quiet. Then all of a sudden,
Oh,
boom.
shit. That is like, I mean,
it sounds like someone walking down the hall and slamming the door.
slams.
Watch. Nothing to see here. Doop de doop. Just going for a walk down the hall and slam.
Oh my God. That's scary.
Yeah. One of the haunts that happens at the Villisca house is you hear footsteps walking down the hall.
Yeah.
It's very, very common. And what do we see in this footage? The same hallway. Footsteps.
The door
door.
slamming, though.
Very significant.
I mean,
That's wild.
yeah.
Anything that I've seen, read about, done research into, just kind of leans it in the direction of it's just really haunted.
Yeah, I agree. It's really haunted. And there's a lot of psychic imprinting, residual energy left behind. I mean, that there should be, considering what happened in the house.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
Would you go and spend the night there?
yes, I would.
You would spend the night there?
100%. I would go.
Huh.
I want to go. I want to see. I can tap in from here, right? I can say I can tap in from here, true. But it's so much better to go to the actual location so you can be in the space, feel the energy, touch the walls. Like, it's so much more fun.
I've noticed since us being here talking about the Villisca Axe Murder House, you've had a lot of moments of, you kept repeating serial killer. You were kind of tapping in psychically a little bit about what you possibly might think. Do you feel like a connection to this case?
Well, I think, yes. I mean, I can tap into cases, from a distance. I think what's happening in this particular case is my analytical mind is like, oh, it has to be the Reverend. And then as I'm tapping in, I'm saying serial killer, like not even wanting to, multiple times in a row. And to me, it's like, oh, maybe it actually wasn't the Reverend and it was this other guy who was a serial killer. So it's weird like that. I mean, it's interesting. The spirit world, can kind of, make its way in, or the information can make its way in, even if I don't want it to.
Sure.
Being a psychic medium, you really have to be able to get out of your own way and out of the analytical mind. And I think in this case, I'm looking at all the facts and I'm trying to understand what is logical, and sometimes it's not logical, right? And it's also why going into investigations totally blind is the best way to go in. Because I have all these facts, which is great. I love that I can look at all of the angles, but when I go in totally blind, I don't have this, so nothing else is getting in the way. I'm just going. Freeform.
Yeah.
It's better.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, the house today. In 2023, it was acquired by a company called Ghost Adventures Tour Firm. Not to be confused with the Ghost Adventures TV shows. Completely separate. Just the only thing that's the same is the name.
Yep.
So visitors can go to the house and you can investigate. You can do your thing. The owners are heavily leaning into the ghost tourism. So yeah, I actually wouldn't mind going to do a couple nights there.
It'd be so awesome.
Yeah. All right, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you're on YouTube, please smash that like and subscribe button. Also, turn your notifications on so you know when we're dropping new content. If you're watching on Rumble, thank you so much for the follow, and please follow and tell your friends on Rumble about us. If you're listening via podcast or however you get your podcast, thank you so much. We very much appreciate the support as well. Now, Patreon subscribers, please stick around because I've got some extra content that Cindy and I are going to give you right now.
As we wrap up our journey through the twisted corridors of the Villisca Axe Murder House, let's take a moment to honor the souls lost to the darkness. This house of horrors blurs the lines between the living and the dead, where the secrets of the past refuse to stay buried. Listen to the warnings of those who've walked these halls before you, because the price of curiosity might be more than you're willing to pay.